And welcome back, everyone, to episode 3 of our new weekly series, SNG at the Studio. This week, we are going to be working on the Skydiver, the Martian. We're going to start the Martian. Yes, we are. Finally, at long last, we're going to start sculpting the head of our Martian for Martians Attacks SNG. As you know, the D is finished. We're going to cover a little bit to our client about how it comes apart, it goes back together, and then we're going to take it into town and ship it. I also wanted to talk about, we're going to have Tammy Klein, very talented actress, very nice, wonderful human being, coming to our studio this Saturday so that she can have her ears cast. Now, what's going on now, you know David Faith is making us all uniform. We're going to photograph Tammy in one of the uniforms. Her picture is going to be put on the cover of the pattern. So for us doing the photography and helping him with that, he is making us all uniforms, which is incredible. So Tammy expressed that she had an interest in having her ears cast and some Vulcan ears made for her, and we're going to do that. So we're going to be able to show you how this is done from the very start till the very end, and eventually have Tammy and all of us standing on the bridge of the Enterprise with everything lit up and all the screens going down the road. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to look forward to that, and of course we are going to videotape the process every step of the way, starting with the ears being cast on Saturday. Now, Mary, is there anything I forgot? How about that Skydiver? Well, the Skydiver is going to be, we're going to start painting it this week. It's my hope by the end of the week to get the base coat on it. So, and then with any luck, some of the other colors, but certainly by next week, we're going to be looking at an almost done model. Of course, I do have to wait for Big Dave, my friend Big Dave, as we affectionately call him, to make the internal parts for it, meaning the watertight compartment. We call it a WTC that has all the electronics in it and servos, and the bladder system that makes the thing or submarine function as a submarine. But other than that, it'll be done and ready for that installation. Wow! Let's get the week started. Okay, I'm shooting this primarily so that my client, Jilin, can see how to put this together once you get it, because you're going to have it in parts. Now, here's where we plug in down here, which is very simple. It's just a cord that goes in there. And then we're going to turn this very carefully on its side, like so, being very, very careful. I'm going to disconnect this, and of course you do all this in reverse. Now you can't connect it backwards. You'd have to push it in really hard and won't do it. It's made so it'll only go in one way. This way you can't short it, and it's red to red, black to black. Anyway, you disconnect that. This power here goes to the switch out here to the plug-in and also powers the blue lights. Now we can take this off the stand like so. This will pull through. Then we're going to hold this by the neck and you twist very slowly, and this will pull right out. And of course when you put it back together, you're going to do the same motion. I mean, you're going to push that through here till it comes out here, then place this down in here. One thing you have to be very, very careful about, because the mount up in here is epoxy, and it's rooted to this material, which really very few glues want to stick to. I found that epoxy worked the best, but if you push this up in too hard, you can break that mount loose. So you just want to make it go in. I'll show you. I'm going to feed this through. I can do this pretty much by myself. It's better if you have someone hold it. But whatever you do, do not support it from the saucer alone, because the weight of the engineering section makes the engineering section want to get away from the saucer section, and it cracks it. So you support it there. It's really the best place I found. Now this is all the way through. You're going to pull that up, and very carefully, so you don't scratch the paint, just push that in. It'll go in only so far. Once you see the bronze colored paint, stop. You can see a little bit of the brass, push it up to there, stop. It's pretty tight fitting. And that's as much as you push it in. You don't wait till you feel pressure, you only push it in as far as you see paint. And that's really all there is to it. Now this will be shipped, of course, in these as the model, the power supply, the base, and the mounting neck. And this is the foam here that I'm going to build under it and around it and top of it, very much like a camera case. So that, and then that'll be inside of a box, and that box will go inside of a larger box with more padding around it so that we don't have any problems. The nice thing is the model's fairly lightweight, so the less mass you have when they're shoving that package around, the less likely it is to get broken. So that's how we're going to do that. I am putting back the reference to where I'm going to cut some drains on this fine skydiver model. They are quite apparent on the other side, and I've already drilled some holes for where they're going to go, so I can actually drill out the holes and then file them out and have these drains, because these drains are what we call open to sea. But on this side, they don't show up very well. So I'm trying to make some reference lines here, checking to make sure that they're all even. On this side we're okay, and we can see the original lines, and interestingly enough, it would appear that they go at an angle and not parallel to the base, but I'm not quite sure until I mark it. Yeah, it's a little higher here and a little lower there. I don't think it's really supposed to be that way, because it's quite typical with garage kits. These are different on both sides. These should actually be lower to match that side. So I'm just going to do what I have on that side to make it the same. And then we'll go file open just for the heck of it. Watch my language. No, I ain't going to do it either. I was going to say excrement and grins, but can we say that, Mary? No? Okay. You know, there's definitely some discrepancies here. In a second here, I'm going to drill out and file a hole right on camera. I'm drilling holes inside the openings, and then I kind of did this. And it allows me to thin these walls. This polyester is so weak that compared to epoxy, that's very easily cut through. As you can see, with just hardly any effort at all, I'm getting through this stuff. So over here, I've already cut that one open, and I should have marked them all off with pencil a bit more, but I can see what's going on here. And I'm just going to do that. And file them out and get them nice and straight the way they're supposed to be. That's a little wrong. So I love about using pencil. You can erase it. It's only everything in life you didn't like could be just erased. I know we'll be editing that. Okay, so I got a nice little straight line there to follow. And you see what this little file makes very quick work of, it will work fast on epoxy hulls as well, but on this polyester, it's quite impressive how quickly it's opening these up. And you get a nice even, square, rectangular drain. Just like that, see? Just like in the movies. That's a little bit of fuzzies there. We'll get rid of those. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be doing all over this model. We'll come back when I have more done. Got all the holes cut on this. I do have to put the ones, there's these that go under here, which I kind of overlooked. And there's some drains on the bottom that are pretty easy to do, but I got all these in. These are windows, as it turns out. This is some kind of intake here. These are vents here. They're fairly symmetrical. It's really difficult to get them absolutely perfect, as anyone knows who's done this work, when they're not defined really well. And even after you define them well, with some improved geometry based on using various tools like this and this, you know, they're still, you know, they're not perfect. But one thing that amazes me is going down and looking at a real submarine at dock and looking at the limber holes on it. They aren't either. They're made by human hands. So they don't have printers that big yet, but give them time. So this is really, really looking nice. I'll kind of turn it this way to camera. Got this open here too, which wasn't open before. There's an opening right here. I'm going to put some grills behind this tomorrow. Get the drains on the bottom, and that'll allow me to start painting it, which will be the next step after all these are in. Well, what we're doing here is we're making more holes in this lovely, lovely model. And as it turns out, there's a set of these here under here. So I had to match them, and I've done them on both sides because they were, in fact, not present. And they'll actually be very effective drain holes to drain the water out of this hole when it comes out of the water, also for when it submerges, because we want to be able to get all the air out of the hole, which is why there's these limber holes in submarines in the first place. So as usual, you know, I drill the holes after I marked them because they were no longer visible on the hull, and then file them out. Once these are done, I've got to put a few down here to drain water, and we're going to put a coat of gold paint on this. We've got this lovely Krylon metallic gold. It's actually a brass color, not really a gold. And we've got this sort of flattish nickel, which it does have on it when you look at the pictures. Now I know what you're thinking. My God, that's so shiny, and so it's not going to look like that once it's on here and been slightly rubbed down and everything. I just needed that brass look. So we'll actually, hopefully, get at least get some paint, some color on this, and get a look at what we're really dealing with, and then probably go back in tomorrow and tighten up things a bit more. So for right now, though, I just got to get all these darn things filed open, which doesn't take that long because the resin itself, the polyester resin, is very easily sanded. So we'll come back and take a look at this in a moment. We are putting little tiny parts on this, and I'm trying to figure out where they all go. I'm noticing there's a great deal of parts that are no longer or were not included. I think that one goes there. With the kit, they're simply missing, and I'm going to have to make them from scratch, which is kind of a pain in the butt. And I'm going to do a lot of that after I get this painted gold, because most of the parts are not, in fact, painted gold. So I'm trying to figure out where these go and trying to get a number on them. These go like this, so I'm going to get those on next. But what I'm going to do is put a coat of paint on here. There's little parts that are missing here, a couple of little bumps that are missing there. Most of this stuff I can sort of make myself out of something. Not too hard. Some of it's going to be difficult, like the scopes and masks, because not everything's here. Yeah, so all the holes cut, of course. These are now on these sort of hinge-looking buckle things, and these goodies here, which do sit up higher than the rest of the model. So why don't we put a light dusting of gold on this? Because I'm really tired of looking at it in gray. And then, of course, I'll paint it again, but I just want to get a coat of paint on here, a little bit of gold on this, to see what is needed, because I could sit here and preen and fix and spend hours doing all kinds of stuff that once the gold's on it and the weathering starts, that I'll never see. So I'm just wasting time. So we're going to dust it with some gold next. Really. See these? These are little tiny parts on a big messy tray. They're poured like this. And they're really not very good. That is to say that, I mean, the parts are fine, but the way they're poured up, you have to separate them, including these here, and everything you see, these parts here, which I'm putting on, this one, from this kind of open mold where they poured flat. He should have had, in a silicone mold, he should have had a piece that fit on top that he could clamp together that would press out all the excess that's floating on top, so you would just get the part. I've done this myself when I've been doing kits. I've went, well, you know, gee, they can just flat sand it and stuff. But these kind of take the cake. I mean, they're really, they take some tooling and stuff again. But again, you know, it's always up to the modeler, so to be a modeler, and that's what we're doing, and they're working out fine. I mean, this is going to make a really nice model. I'll give the guy who did this, I forget his name, please forgive me, but he did a really great job on the masters. I mean, the shape of this thing is beautiful, and it's nearly Canon. I say nearly because it's not 100% Canon, but it's really close. And having these pictures on here are great. Now, there's some of them are missing. Some of the parts are missing from this kit, and like this piece here is this piece that goes here, and it wouldn't fit. So what I did is put sandpaper over this and went up and down until I got a nice fit. And then I noticed this huge bubble underneath, which I'm going to fix with filler before I put it on. So that's where I'm at right now with this model. Oh, I just located where some more parts go that I was not clear on, and these go here. So these are going to be separated like so, and you see these huge chunks of stuff that's on them. I have to use the flat sander to get rid of. As soon as these are all back on, we'll come back and take a look at this, and then we'll stick some gold paint on it. I have just sprayed this metallic Krylon on, and this stuff is fantastic. I mean to tell you, this stuff is already dry. I mean, completely. I mean, it's only been drying for about 15 minutes. I'm sure it's not on the real level, not completely dry, but I've got this. Hardly even took a half a can just to do this. So tomorrow, when this sets up a bit more and dries a bit more, I'm going to go back over it with one of these sponges, one of these fine sanding sponges like this, and get rid of the orange peel off of it, sand that down, or maybe even use some 400, and then I'll hit it again, because there's a few areas that are rough, even though the the primer was really smooth, I still got these rough areas. But that is probably just orange peel from the paint, which can be easily fixed just by sanding it down and then buffing it up. There is, as I'm looking here, much to my surprise, you got it. It's got Aztecs. Basically, it's got this lighter color here, right there, which is that color here. I mean, this is a perfect match. And it's got it up here by the door, so I'm going to have to kind of do some creative masking here, and maybe I'm using like some all-clads, because I see copper down here. It's going to be a tricky paint job, and of course these don't have any of the slits in them, so what I'm going to do on these is paint these silver, and then I'm going to make mask and paint those black. There's some little doors here that are not in here that I'm going to do by using stencils and pens. So, and then there's this, there should be a screen right here, but I'm going to paint it to look like a screen, because if I go in here and dig into this, it's very thick there. I'm not going to get a nice effect. So I will just paint the effect is what I will do. It shouldn't be too difficult to do, because in this model, there's no relief there. These are all in. These look about right. These have to be blended in a bit more. There's a screen that goes in here. There's screens that go in there. We're going to do all that this week. And of course, you see the black trim here, which goes like this. It goes like this all the way around the door and back to here. So we're going to do that as well. And there's actually some little bits of detail up in here. So we got our work cut out for us, but we are well on the way to starting the real paint job and detailing on this model. All I need is my sonic screwdriver to make it done in no time. There we go. Well, I've got some gold on this. Well, actually, again, it's brass to start with. Now, I know a lot of you have a lot of varied opinions about what this should be painted. A lot of you have done a lot of what you consider expertise work and research on how it's painted. And I've seen all that thanks to my client and friend, Byron Colley. But, you know, when it comes to looking at as many pictures as I looked at this, I know how to get what I'm seeing in those photographs, because that's taking into account the fact that it looks different in every photograph, and that's due to the nature of lighting. So I've been able to figure, looking at the lighting, this is brightly lit, this is a flash, this is on the stage, what the colors are. At least I can get really close to it. And I'm going to start with a brass. This is beautiful. It never looks like this. Well, I suppose it could if you had a really extra smooth surface and you put it on there and you polished it and buffed it, but basically you get what you see here. And that's what I knew I'd get. And this is Krylon metallic spray paint, and this is brass metallic. Now, there is an Aztecing effect on this that goes around the doors and zigzags down here and everything, which I determined looks like this, nickel. So I'll be using that. And likewise, I'll be using, of course, semi-gloss black for all the anti-glare areas down here, here, here. But what I'm doing right now that I've got this coat on here and it's somewhat dry, is I'm getting rid of some of the orange peel just by taking some 400 grit and some water and just kind of getting rid of it. Now, you might lose a little bit of the paint. You'll have to go back over it again. But for the most part, it's getting it really smooth with very little effort. So I'm really happy about that, because I do not like a rough surface on my models. That's always a problem with air gunning and spray cans. But I really like the way this is starting to look already. And after I wet sand it like that, it's just so smooth and beautiful. Maybe another coat and we're there. Or just start putting on the other colors and start dancing the different colors and values around it as I go by taping and masking off those sections, which is probably really all I'm going to have to do. I don't think I need to really recoat this again all over. This works really well. I'm just using 400. Even that might be a little bit severe, but it goes really, really nice into going smooth again to my hands. So This is looking terrific. I'll hold it up to camera because Mary's kind of over there. You can see how pretty that's starting to look. And I also, I got a lot of the small parts on finally. At least all the ones I could figure out where they went, because really there are some that kind of hard to figure where they go. I haven't done the bottom yet, but I will. We're going to do the top first and then we'll do the bottom. So this is coming along really well. Likewise, next week, this thing should be completely painted and ready for the internals. I've started the sculpture at long last on the Martians Attacks SNG, and some of you will remember, and some of you won't, that we have changed it to Martians Attack SNG because we are doing our own take on it, which is to say, it's influenced by Mars Attacks, but the alien, the costume, a lot of the things you'll see will be reminiscent of what you saw on the cards, but not exactly the same. What I'm doing is making this look different from Mars Attacks we all know. As I said, I think the phone rang, and so I lost my track, so bear with me. What I'm doing is we're going to actually make some cards up that look like the Mars Attacks cards, but they're really going to be Martians Attacks SNG cards. So they're going to be in the same vein, but with the Mars Attacks alien looking different. These are now Martians Attack. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk over here, because what I've been doing is I've been sculpting this pretty much from memory. This sketch was very quickly done off the profile drawing done upstairs so that we would get this to match our armature. Because what we did is we enlarged a Mars Attacks, Mary did, and traced around it. I did a tracing over that real quick just to get the height and stuff right on this, and the mass, and I masked this all out by hand. I haven't done anything with any sculpting tools yet other than a pencil, because it was sitting here. This is typical of me when I sculpt. I like to mask stuff out by hand, get the feeling, get the bulge of the head and everything just about right. Most of this is going to be left lumpy anyway because we're going to sculpt the brain effect. But I'm going to go over here and I'm going to show you. This was given to me. This was taken from the molds, and we've talked about this before, for the stop motion puppet that was going to be done for the Tim Burton Mars Attacks Alien, which sadly was not used, and it was replaced with CGI. This is a beautiful piece, and what I'm trying to do is not copy it. And this is pretty much based on the top cards, and they put their own spin on it as well, but it's closer to the top cards than what I'm doing. You can see the difference clearly. Of course, I popped eyeballs in it, but you know, we've got these big points here. We got these little tabs coming up here. His eyebrows are more pronounced. I might even put eyelids on it. I haven't decided yet. That are pretty far back, but then he could actually blink. It always bothered me that it couldn't have any eyebrow covers. It bothers me it doesn't have any lips either, but I'm going to think about that. But you can see the real difference between the two. So, and it really helps not to look at this and do your own version. Now, I don't have to worry about doing the whole body because the body is under a costume. So the body will be constructed out of foam on the actual aluminum and brass armature that will be articulated. This will be a two-piece mold will be made on this when the sculpture is done, and we're going to make an underskull core for this, and from that underskull core we will make another silicone mold and make a fiberglass piece that fits underneath here that I can cut away various sections of and attach cables to move the very soft silicone skin that it'll eventually have. So I'm just roughing it out by hand, just getting the feel for it first before I start to go in on it tomorrow with some sculpting tools. But I'm just glad to have done this. In about the last 40 minutes, I went from zero to this. And I wish I would have kind of documented the whole thing so you could have seen the clay come up. But basically, I lumped on a lot of this Chavant clay and did some massing and some effects just with the clay alone by hand. I'm going to try to get the tendons in the neck here and just get a nice feel for it. And I already like it as far as feel's concerned, not looking so much like the original top cards, but still having the same feeling. So I kind of want to point out, make his shoulders kind of pointy. This will be all blended right down onto the on the body. We're going to free form and foam. So this much of this, I mean, this is all going to be under the costume anyway, but it's still kind of neat to have this, because who knows? Maybe I'll make up some busts of this just to have, or that we could even sell. So if you wanted to have a Martians Attacks SNG Martian. This is starting to look much more like what I had in mind. I'm pretty sure I've talked before in this video as the week goes by about our plan on making this more of our own take on what a Martian from Martians Attacks, as we call it, would look today over what was done in the 60s. We have lost the teeth. We now have lips. Now, we're still going to be able to see the teeth. You're going to see the teeth when it talks and when it lifts its lips up, and it will be doing that. This is going to be able to snarl and sneer and talk. And likewise, now these are temporarily sculpted in here, but I'm going to replace these eyeballs with the actual eyeballs that are going to go in here and sculpt the lids over, because the lids will be actually sculpted almost closed. That way, once we have the skin, they can be either opened up wide, narrowed, or closed. And so the eyeballs have to be a real form, and I'm probably just for now going to use some wood round balls for that, and then make a mold off the ball and produce my own eyeballs out of resin. I've added these points here, I've added these points up here, I've added these points down here. So this is really a lot more of our own design and our own look. And likewise, the costume or the uniform spacesuit it's going to wear will be reminiscent, but kind of steampunk-like. The chest pack's going to have round gauges in it with brass and white and maybe even steam coming out of it. The ray gun's going to be very metal-looking, like in shades of brass and other metals. I'm not sure about the bubble over its head. It may be a half bubble, and this part here will be more brass with big rivets on it. We're going to have fun with this, and like I said, Mary and I have been putting a lot of creative input into how we're going to make this more of our own over what has been done in the past. And we're even going to make up cards, because they're in the story when I'm looking at the cards that I used to look at when I was a kid. Those cards will be reminiscent of the original top cards, but again, it's going to be our own kind of spin on it with these characters and the changes we made. Likewise, the UFO, flying saucer, whatever you like to call it, is going to be different as well. Similar, but a lot more rustic and brass-like and kind of steampunk and rivets and things. So I'm just working to put the brains in, which I've done by balling up clay. Eventually I will smooth all this stuff down and go around and work at it. Like there's areas that need to have little bits added between some of the squiggles. We're just going to do this and then eventually go back in and brush it all down and get it not quite so punched up. I've gone all the way around to here. We still have to come down to here, and I still have to do a lot of work back here. But once all this is done, I need to go over this and smooth it all down. And what I'm going to use, I found on the Chavant clay, and this clay is fabulous. I would never work with Roma again. But I'm finding that I know if I use lacquer thinner on this, it will break this stuff down really fast. But I don't want to expose myself to the toxins of it. After all, I'm 62, I got this far. I'm not pushing my luck anymore. But you'll see that the alcohol, very much the way the alcohol works on Roma clay, which is what we used to use, brushes this down really well. It allows me to smooth it. You see just that little bit I did in there has got that going smooth already. Doesn't take away all the detail, just leaves enough for it to work, just like what we're used to doing. But this clay is fantastic. It's new to me, guys, because, well, not new. I've been working with it for a while, but I haven't been sculpting a great deal with it. But it's somewhat fresh to me because when I tried to use Roma recently, I said, geez, I never want to work with this again. Not to mention that this will not cause problems in my silicone molds because it won't react to the sulfurs. It doesn't have any. So this stuff is terrific. So you see just that little bit of work there. I got a little bit of smoothing in there. And I'm going to go around and start smoothing this whole thing down. But really, before I go too much further with that, what I want to do is get the actual eyeballs in I'm going to use. So that means digging those out and putting those wood balls in. That's about as much as we're going to get done on this week. But next week, I think you'll see a finished sculpture, and hopefully we're going to go for the mold. I like it. Well, it's been quite a week, and boy, did we get a lot done. Really great to get to that point where we got gold on the skydiver. It's actually a brass color, and at this point, we're going to wet sand that down, get all the orange peel off of it, and then start going over it with a nickel color. There's sort of an Aztec feeling to it that's on it. So there's like a nickel, there's blacks, there's coppers, and there's lots of other details that I'm probably going to have to make the decals up myself in Photoshop and put them on an inkjet printer just so we have the rescues, the name, sky, and diver, and but we'll get to that. And first thing to do is get it all painted. There's some screens that need to go in as well. Likewise, I really like where our Martian is going, and it's my hope next week the sculpture will be finished. Now, the next thing you're going to see is how that gets molded and how we make a core for that mold. So basically, we're going to have a two-piece mold, outer female, on that sculpture, and then we're going to put the two halves together once the clay has all been removed and core it. And that is to say, we take a wet water-based clay cut to a nice even thickness, and we line the inside of the mold, and we pour more stone in there. And what that does is create a core so that when we run it either out of foam rubber or silicone, we get an even thickness all the way around, and it'll contour over those eyeballs so that we can make the eyeballs, lids blink and everything. So I'm very pleased with that. Let's not forget also that you're going to see a special edition starting, and that is going to be when we have the lovely Tammy Klein do her prosthetic ears. We're going to start doing her Vulcan ears for her. This Saturday we'll start documenting that. I wanted to take this time to speak very briefly about Dick Smith. I know a lot of you are all talking about Dick and sharing your experiences. And I'm going to kind of take a moment here just to do a little bit of that since there's been so much done. For me, I always go back to that handbook, and the first time I found it sitting in the magazine rack at the grocery store, I was with my mom. I looked at that, I bought it, or she let me get it, I brought it home, and I went, wow, I want to do this. I want to make myself into the Wolfman and all these characters. Out of everything I can think of having to do with Dick Smith, that is the thing I'm most grateful to him for of all, because that's why I'm sitting in this captain's chair. He just inspired me to do what I do today, just as he has all of you, and you know who I mean. So I just wanted to say simply, Dick, thank you for that. You live in us every day. We do our work. Everywhere we turn, we see your work. We see your name go by, and we feel you, and you're present in us all the time. You live with us. Thank you so much. Also, I want to tell you a little tiny bit about my personal experience with Dick, and I know here we go, but it's not going to be long-winded. Thank you, Randy Cook, mostly because when I was working for Randy's an old friend of mine, Dick used to come by and visit all the time, so I got to know him pretty well. And, you know, I always wanted to talk to him about makeup and what was it like to work on The Exorcist and all that, because, you know, even though I was in the business, I was a geeky fan. You know what he wanted to talk to me about? You know, those radio-controlled airplanes sitting on the ceiling here? That's what he wanted to talk to me about. And I'm like, well, Dick, that's great, but let's talk about... No, I want to talk about the model airplanes. It's the darndest thing. I always think of Dick after all he's done, what I had done, that's what he had a real keen interest in. I only wish that I had been able to teach him how to fly one, but we were too close apart. So that's my little story about Dick. We will miss you, Dick, very, very much. We'll all miss you, but like I said, you'll live with us in our hearts every single moment of our lives.